Remember when that whole thing was happening with Popeye's chicken? Popeye's chicken came out with a chicken sandwich, and all these videos start popping up of people getting in fights about Popeye's chicken. People were smashing cars into because they didn't get they ordered 5 Popeye chicken sandwiches. They only got 3. They smashing their cars into the building, and people was getting their butt whipped. By people was going crazy over that Popeye's chicken,
Yeah.
right? And that goes in line what we were talking about. Some of this food can drive you crazy.
Hmm.
Now, Bismillah, we begin with the name of the creator of the heavens and earth who stands alone without a partner. This is your host, CL, for Urban Muslim Podcast, and back again for the second show. I've got my special guest, Michelle Renee Davis from Where Faith Meets Mental Health. Say hello to the audience.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and people who are not Muslim. Good evening. And I hope that this is be a beneficial discussion for you guys to help your family with any kind of the concerns that you might be having. Inshallah. Ta'ala.
I mean,
Mhm.
so um, I got a few questions running through my mind. I got some questions that were sent to me, and I kind of wanted to pick up where we left off on the last podcast because I've been doing my research. I've been doing my
Okay.
research, and I got some articles that I want you to comment on about microbiome and all that because that's man, I found some information. I'm like, wow, man, that's tripping me out. I didn't know all that was going on inside my body, man. You got man. I'm gonna save that for later. Okay, so um, as we said in the first episode, just in case we got some people that's clicking on the second episode that didn't watch the first episode. You need to go watch the first episode if you're going to understand what's going on here. Tell them a little rundown of who you are and what you do.
So I am a trauma counselor. I have been doing counseling now for about the past 5 years. I graduated in 2018 with my degree in clinical psychology with a focus in trauma. I have now been licensed for about 2 years now. And so basically what I do is I help people who have made experienced trauma reconnect with themselves, reconnect with other people, reconnect with their spirituality to help them move forward with their life and find freedom um, in this life. And what I'm saying by freedom, especially if you're Muslim, what I mean by freedom is turning back to being a slave of Allah. Because if you're not a slave of Allah, you're a slave to something else, whether that's
Mm.
emotions, money, status, whatever it is, we become slaves to because that's just our general makeup. So hopefully, through my process of helping people in through their trauma, that they experience freedom from being a slave to this worldly life, this dunya.
I hear that. I hear that. So let me ask you, what got you interested in this particular field? Why did you want to go study it? What sparked your interest in this?
Well, it's not really so one of a line that I say a lot is behaviors are just stories that couldn't be voiced. So even my choice in careers was based on a story. So I have, if for anybody that's interested in like reading and stuff, I have wrote a book called To All the Men I Love before. And basically, what it talks about is some of the relationships that I've been through and how traumatic they were. But because of my own childhood traumas, it influenced the kind of relationships that I chose, the kind of, and picked and involved myself in. And now I'm trying to work through all of my experiences so that I can learn to, again, be free myself from a lot of the trauma that I experienced from homelessness as an adolescent. I experienced some childhood trauma where I experienced some adolescent like homelessness. I've experienced sexual abuse as a child. I've experienced like my mother being on drugs and alcohol growing up. So I experienced a lot of things that influenced the way I see myself, the world, and other people that was very maladaptive. And I took it out on other people and now going through that journey of healing. And even though like I am the therapist, it's things that I'll be talking to people and still experience healing even in helping other people and what they're going through.
Mm.
So a lot of it is for myself. I know people always love to think that people get into this helping field because they're like, oh, I just want to help the whole world. But in reality, it's because we want to understand our own selves better too. And
Mhm.
that's what has helped me through this whole process of learning who I am as a person and the things that I experience.
Okay. I think that's a good thing to hear that you've been through some things. You may have been through same things your clients have been through. Because some people got an idea of, they be like, y'all religious people. Y'all religious people. Y'all don't know nothing. Y'all religious. And like you don't know what's up. You don't know what's going on out here. We don't know the time, and that's not true at all. Um, Alhamdulillah. Now, let me ask you this. For someone who may be thinking of getting into this field, they may be thinking of being a counselor, a therapist, addiction therapist, maybe what you are, a trauma therapist. What would be some advice that you would give them?
The best advice that I can give you before coming a therapist is get to know who you are. As and the reason why that is the most important part before becoming a therapist is getting to know who you are. And it's because one, it helps you not project. So you could be sitting in a therapy session and you get triggered. People don't
Mm,
realize that. Like you can get triggered in
mm,
sessions. And you have to realize that that's your stuff and not the client. Now, being triggered is not necessarily a bad thing because also it may give you insight into a person's problems too. Also,
okay, okay.
so like let's just say, you get triggered by in general people being selfish. That's your problem. But however, there may be an insight into why they can't keep friends.
Hmm. Yeah.
But if you don't know that and you don't realize that because you not haven't done no work on yourself, you'll automatically just internalize like this person gets on my nerves instead of saying, hey, I'm triggered. What is this dynamic all about?
Okay.
And
Okay.
exploring that too, even within yourself, but also and sometimes like I've told clients like, when you did that, that really got on my nerves. And not because I'm trying to work through my problem with them, but just so they can understand like this is other people's probably experience of you too.
Hmm. Mm. Gives them an added insight.
Mhm.
Now, we know, I mean, from the name of your business here, where faith meets mental health. Why is it important for you to incorporate your faith with all the things you may have learned in the secular university and whatnot? And how do you get that balance and in practicality when you're dealing with clients?
So it's important to me because I don't think that people understand that everything influence each other. That's
Mm,
number one. Whether that's spirituality, mental health, and your physical health. They all influence each other. They're all simultaneously working at the same time. All of the secular stuff that they teach you, if you look at most religion, it came from religion.
mm, okay.
Religion was here first,
Mm,
right? So let's think about like the whole idea of like when they say community is important.
mm-hmm. Uma.
What does the Quran and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam talk about? You know, Jamaat and
Yeah.
having a community and being kind and forgiveness. But we talk about that in therapy in a secular world, like this is just something new. Like, oh my goodness, you should forgive people. Um, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Jesus Alaihi Salam, have all talked about these concepts of forgiveness because They didn't say it in a way that we say in a secular world, as far as forgiveness is for yourself, but it still has been talked about. It hasn't been like explained to in the common folks language, but that's something like all those ideologies in the secular world about mental health and getting better have already been explained in the Quran and Sunnah.
Mm. I once seen an article a couple of years back where they did a study survey in Europe, and they said that the Muslim population in Europe was the most happiest people in Europe,
Mhm,
and the they were secular who did the study and everything. They attributed that to, they said the Muslims had more human connections
mhm.
than the regular everyday Europeans.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
so alhamdulillah for that. Um, let me ask you, as a Muslim and a therapist, how many Muslims did you see when you were in college pursuing, this knowledge about therapy? And do you know a lot of Muslim therapists? And third question, three-headed question, is there a Muslim like therapist association or psychological association in the United States of America?
so I do remember one time trying to sign up to a like Muslim directory um
Okay.
before. However, I'm not going to say it's based on race. I'm not going to say that. However, for
Mhm.
some odd reason, they thought I wanted services. When I told them that I didn't want service, that I was trying to sign up to the directory, I never heard anything back.
Oh,
So that was that. Um,
okay.
and when I was when I was going to a university, I actually got my degree at a Christian university, so there was no Muslims.
Okay, you was the only one. They was zooming on you. They saw that.
So
We
I
gotta make,
wasn't
we
the
gotta give her
only
the
one.
gospel.
No, I wasn't. No, it wasn't that. That's a whole nother story for another. I wasn't practicing at that time. Um,
Okay, okay.
but that's a whole another journey of life.
Mm-hmm.
Inshallah, I returned back at me. I mean, alhamdulillah. But so I wasn't
Alhamdulillah.
there, so it wasn't there. But I went to the university only because they had trauma, and it's very few that actually has trauma therapy in their curriculum. Um,
Mm, okay.
but how many Muslim therapists I know is really not a lot. Um,
Mm,
and it's not a lot that works independently. And you cannot work independently unless you have a license. So a lot of them do work in like inpatient treatment facilities and at drug and alcohol places. I have met other Muslims that work there, but you got to have Medicaid. Um,
okay.
and I and what I think that needs one of the things that needs to happen is that people needs to reach out to other people and like start having conversations about what people do in just fields in general. Um, I have had some Muslims, two sisters before who are getting degrees in this field, reach out to me. Um, and we've had some conversations, and I was like, if you ever need anything, like I'm willing to help you, whatever that may look like. So
Hmm.
there are other Muslims that are in the field,
Okay.
but it's very, very few,
Mm.
very few.
Well, maybe there needs to be a Black Muslim um, mental health care association.
Absolutely, I agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
So when you gonna put that together?
Unfortunately, I don't. Listen, I wish I could be superwoman, but I can't. I have this practice, but I also just started another nonprofit called Rust Recovery House. And that's
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is purchase some property so that I can have Muslims who suffer from drug and alcohol addiction have a place to stay so they can get recovery. That's Islamic programming.
Mm.
So I'm at the beginning stages and process of that. And I want to start with adolescence because we always forget about children. Like adult addicts usually started as children. They didn't
True.
just, yeah, they didn't just work
True.
up at 30 years old and be like, you know what, I'm about to smoke crack. Like
Yeah.
that's really not a thing. Most time you've already started the abuses of drugs way before then. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting with adolescence and trying to move forward. So I'm about to start going into the schools to do like workshops and things like that. So I have a lot on my plate already, so it's hard to try to do an association.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, if somebody out there that's listening, maybe you're in the you're a Black Muslim in the healthcare profession. That's something you need to think about. Putting together an association. Building that up. Maybe have some conferences, share knowledge and resources with
Yeah.
because it's is I know that it's very difficult to find a Muslim uh, therapist or
Mhm.
psychologist. Period.
Mhm.
It's very
And I've
difficult.
never met no Muslim psychologist that's black. No, I've not met one. I worked in a few places.
So now, let me ask you this: as parents
Mhm.
dealing with a child who may have mental issue problems, who may have behavioral problems, let's say, piggybacking off the things we spoke about the last show. What if you come to realize, you know what? I done messed up. I
Mhm.
done messed up. I done messed up some marriages. I done had some relationships. I started getting in relationships and having kids before I dealt with my own trauma. So, yeah, I acknowledge that I done messed up. I done messed up. And now, there's something going on with my child. You know, what's the advice that you can give to that parent? How can they start over? How can they start from where they're at to try to increase the mental health of their household and for their children?
Start with yourself. And it's, and again, remember I was saying like a lot of stuff comes from the Quran and Sunnah, right? So one of the
Mhm.
parts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran, he said, save yourself then your family from the fire, right?
Mhm.
And even though it's talking about Jahannam, um, even if you translate that into other things, right? Like you like, I want to save my family from, I messed up and I want to save them. Starting with yourself has a ripple effect. So a lot of times what we do is we try to help the other person first, right? Which sounds great. So we try to help our child first. But it's like if you are the one that's sick and you're treating the symptom, your child is a symptom,
Mm.
right? That doesn't work. Even in medicine, a lot of these drugs that they give you treats the symptoms. It doesn't treat the root cause. The root cause is you. So you
Okay.
have to go and get help yourself because when you become healed, you automatically start interacting with the child differently, right?
Mhm.
And so to give you an example, I have a child on my case right now, and they were saying how she has a lot of anger issues, and it was like she just, you know, she would just step out, and she doesn't know how to regulate, and all this kind of stuff. So something interesting happened in my office where she had knocked over some hot chocolate and she became extremely anxious. And I'm like, it's just hot chocolate. She was like,
Okay.
she was like, if I was at my mom's house, she was like, I would be in big trouble. I said, but it's
Mm.
an accident. She was like,
Mm.
yeah, but my mom, she makes me feel like I can't never do nothing right. And so she started talking about all the stuff. So I
Mhm.
know that with mom, of course, mom is not trying to intentionally make her child anxious. She's anxious.
Okay.
So when I talked to mom, I said, hey mom, are you receiving therapy services? She said I was. I said, for anxiety, right? She was like, yes. I said, your anxiety is impacting your daughter very, very negatively. It's making her anxious. I said, and so now she doesn't know how to regulate her own emotions. And that's why it seems like she can't handle the frustration and anger because you can't handle your frustration and anger.
That's very important right there. So because that parent can't regulate their emotion and they're feeling anxiety, it's producing or it's contributing to the behavior they're seeing in their child that they don't like. They're bringing the child to you for services, but the real root cause of all that was the fact that the parent couldn't regulate their own anxieties.
In general, I have a general rule of thumb.
Okay.
Children are always the identified patient.
Mhm.
They're not the problem. It's always the parents in general.
Mm. Okay.
Unless they have something like schizophrenia, like, like again, like
Yeah.
certain stuff where it's like, is nobody's fault. This is just that.
Mhm.
But in general, when it comes to behavioral problems, in general, a general rule of thumb is that it's parents, whether that's even inconsistencies, right? So one of the things she was saying was like, I feel like my daughter is afraid of the teachers. I said, it's probably not that she's afraid of the teachers. It's probably she's afraid of your response to the teacher's behavior towards her. She like, no,
Mm.
no, she knows she can come to me. Like she was like, my daughter never even seen me in an argument. I
Mm.
said, yeah, I understand that. I hear you. She never saw you in an argument. You behave absolutely appropriate all the time that you are with your daughter and other women. I said, but how many times did you probably notice that she was eavesdropping on your conversation when you was talking about how you was gonna beat somebody up? She like,
Mm.
oh yeah. I was like, yeah, because she ear hustles, doesn't she? She was like, yes. I said, weren't when you were a kid you ear hustled on your parents' conversation? She like, well, yeah. I said, so don't think she doesn't know who you are and what you
Mm.
become upset about. We think
Yeah.
keeping stuff from kids. They be knowing all the tea.
Yeah. You can't hide nothing for no
No,
kids. You
they know.
can't hide nothing. The kids are nosy, boy. I tell you, I was a nosy kid. They wouldn't hide nothing in my house. You try to hide something in the house, I was gonna find it.
Yes, like kids are nosy. And then the funniest ones is the ones that be acting like they ain't listening whole time because they face don't move nothing.
Uh-huh.
They listening always. And then I asked her too. I said, you have to teach your daughter safe people. I said, but think about your relationships with other people. I said, do you tell every single one of your friends all the same information? Don't you have different friends for different things? She was like, "Okay, so sometimes kids have different safety people for other safety things.
Mm.
So instead of just thinking about only you and dad being a safe person, teach your kids who else are safe people. Grandmoms, teachers, principals, coaches, whoever it is, teach them other safe people. But then even within that, you know what I said I used to end with my son was, even if your problem is against me, who can you tell? And people are like, well, why would you say that? You wouldn't do nothing to your kid. Who's to say I don't have a psychotic break one day?
Mm.
Right? And then now
Okay.
we all living in hell because they so afraid to tell on mom. Stuff like this happens.
Okay.
So we have to
Yeah.
be proactive, but also when you also teach them that, you also teach them that your other safe people may not be safe and you might have to tell on them too.
Mm.
It's giving them that green light
Mhm.
to make sure that they are safe.
Mm. That's some wisdom. That's some wisdom that you spitting right there. So, you know, you got to be the change that you want to see.
Hmm.
You have to model the behavior you're trying to get your family members to fall in line with. Because I mean, first of all, the kids can spot hypocrisy, you
Absolutely.
know, and they don't like hypocrisy at all. So, that's why, you know, we got to look at ourselves and we got to
Mhm.
improve ourselves before you could start talking to other people and start telling people what to do. Why are you telling me what to do?
One of the
Wasn't you the one over last week? You said such and such, and you did such, didn't?
yes, one of the things that especially like with my women, I do have men on my caseload, but I always encourage men to also get a coach, a male coach, because I think that having men teach men to be men is more important. But one of the
Okay.
things I always ask them, like my women, I say, what behaviors and what attributes do you want to see in your children? They're like, oh, they say a list of stuff. I said, well, you got to be that. You have to be that, because it goes back to the mirroring neurons. We as people mirror each other. That's just reality. Even with husband and wife, you'll be married long enough, you start sounding like your spouse. You start mimicking their facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
It's to bind people together. So when you're doing something, they're going to do what they see you do, and they're going to mirror that.
That's facts. I remember after my first marriage, I got divorced. Um, I did find some place to stay. So I stayed with some family members. Stayed with my dad, right? And you know, I was practicing the dean in his house. Like I hadn't lived with him since I was a small child. I wasn't Muslim then, but I was Muslim, and I didn't think he was paying attention to me really, because he would never say anything. But then like a year or so afterwards, he told me, man, you used to trip me out. Like, and I heard you reciting the Quran. It'd be I'll be sleeping in bed, and you was up praying and reciting the Quran. I was like, man, and I want to be. He used to say, I want to be like that, and I was like, it kind of blew my mind. Like, wow,
Mhm.
like he was paying attention, and it had an effect on him. you know so you never know who's watching you. You never know who's paying attention to what you're doing. You think you just doing something, you just living your life doing stuff, and you're not even thinking about people are paying attention to you
Mhm.
and wanting to imitate you, or being impressed by what you're doing, or the opposite of that. And
Mhm.
not wanting to be like you.
Yeah.
Being disgusted by your behavior.
Yes. Abdab is so important.
Mm.
That is so important. That, and I'm gonna leave the community unnamed, but in Philadelphia we have a particular
I already know who you talking about.
community that is just
Everybody in America, everybody watch, know who you talking about.
the Abdab is horrible. It's
Uh,
horrible. You know, oh what I never seen you here. Doesn't matter.
that's
You
some crazy. That's a crazy thing to say to somebody. I've never seen you here. And you know what? I already know who you're talking about, but I, I've heard that from so many different people that it has to be true, because all these different people who don't know each other saying the same exact thing can't all be lying.
and I remember when I first took Shahada when I was 16, I used to go there.
Hmm.
And I remember, I'll never forget it actually. It just sticks out in my mind. It was me and another sister that I knew from the group home. And she had on niqab. I had on niqab, and we were all just sitting there. And it was a sister that didn't. And she was like, she's so fresh. She's not covering her face. And I just remember, like, you become so callous. Like when I went there, I remember, like, and I kind of feel like that was part of the reason why I turned away so many years ago, because it hardens your heart going there. Like you just
Mm.
you it's always a bunch of gossip. It's always it like I don't ever remember going there and somebody wasn't the topic of a conversation
Mm.
there. Like never feeling welcome, or anything. Like it's just
And that's very sad, because somebody comes to a mosque and they're coming for healing. They're coming to learn the truth. They're coming to maybe make a change in their life. They're coming, maybe where they live at, they can't. They're a new Muslim, or they're interested in Islam. They can't kick it with the people where they live at because nobody's on that time. So they're coming to the masjid to maybe find some companions, or hear something that can, send them in a different direction. And instead they get that. Isn't that like a form of spiritual abuse?
absolutely
Yeah.
a spiritual abuse. You you try to oust them and make them feel like they are not on the true path because of they are struggling with stuff. But again, if you go back to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because they quick to be like, oh, you don't do this, you don't do that. When If you look at the history, it started with Tawheed for the first 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It started with Tawheed, making sure people understood who Allah is and who they should be
Mm.
worshiping. But you try to
That's
shove them into our ritualistic parts, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong, they are amazing and we should do it. It makes you feel better. But if I don't understand who Allah is, but I learned how to pray, how effective is that in my life?
mm-hmm.
I'm fasting and I'm like, yeah, I ate sahur and I, broke my fast with a date and some water. And I was like, but if I don't know who I'm doing this for, why I'm doing it, how it's going to get me closer to my Lord.
Oh, that's true. I've seen spiritual abuse tear people up. I've experienced spiritual abuse multiple times in Islam and in Christianity. I've experienced
Mhm,
spiritual abuse, and it can really mess you up. It can
mhm.
really mess your head up.
Your
What would you?
soul.
Yeah, it's a wound. Abuse is a wound. It's not just people think if abuse isn't physical,
Mhm.
you know, just shake it off. You need to,
Yeah.
ain't nothing wrong with you, like you said.
Mhm,
Ain't nothing wrong with you. No, something's wrong.
mhm.
Something is wrong.
Yep.
You can't mentally and psychologically abuse people like that, and then expect to be able to build communities.
Mhm.
You know, it's great that so many people give dawah, and it's great. We need more people to give dawah.
Mhm.
But once they take the shahada into the fold of Al Islam, what kind of experience are they gonna? What are they gonna? What experience are they gonna receive? You
Mhm.
know, what's going to happen to them? And every time I see someone take shahada, if I see somebody take shahada in the masjid, I try my best to get the person my information and get their information and try to keep in contact with them because I know what could happen. I
Yep.
know what can happen, what can go wrong.
Mhm.
You know, um, so we were just talking about what a person who they know they're messed up. They're trying to get better for themselves. They're trying to get better for their children. They're trying to help their child. One
Mhm.
aspect of getting better is getting better spiritually. So, what would you say to a person who may not be practicing, who is halfway practicing, who may
Mhm.
have just they straight up done left Islam? They may be, you know what, they've experienced so much pain. I don't even know if God exists. You
Mhm.
know, A'udhu billah. What would you say to the person who's experienced that religious or spiritual abuse?
So, one of the things that I tell people to do is the best thing to at least stop yourself from falling into kufr and disbelief is go on YouTube and look up miracles of the Quran. And the reason why I say start there is because it regrounds you that the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is true, right?
Mm,
That grounds you. Because now instead of questioning if God is real, because the Quran is like living proof that he is real when you do your research on that.
mm-hmm.
But then guess what it does? It turns you back to Allah to ask him questions and to talk and
Okay.
have a conversation with him about what's going on with you. Because a lot of the things that we are going through and experiencing, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam experienced them too.
Mm-hmm.
He's
He was a
experienced them,
human being.
whether that's losing children, what did he do? Whether that's difficulties where his wives, where he was like, I'm about to divorce all of y'all. You know, I don't want y'all get on my nerves. Okay.
Yeah.
He's
Mm-hmm.
experienced hate from his family, Abu Jahal,
Mm-hmm.
and his
Mm-hmm.
wife.
Mm-hmm.
He's experienced oppression
Yes.
from other people, from his country, people that have known him and known that he was never a liar. So all of
He
the
he went against a system.
went against the
He
system,
went against the systemic
oppression.
injustice.
Mhm. So he's experienced all of these things. And guess what happened when he was going through all of these things? Revelations was revealed.
Mm.
And so that's why it's always important to learn the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Quran and those two, it reflects each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when he was experiencing stuff, revelation was coming down. That's Allah's answers to your questions about what's going on with
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. So those same revelations that were coming down to him and that he was disseminating to his companions, we have access to that.
Mhm.
We have access to that for our lives, you know. And
There's
hmm,
nothing that we're going through that either him or companion didn't go through and revelations wasn't sent down.
alhamdulillah. Now that brings a question to my mind. What do you say to the person who says they're going through some mental health issue or behaviors issues and they feel like, you know, I can't go to God, you know, or I'm too dirty, or you know, I do too much wrong, or you know, I gotta solve it. Maybe I'll solve this issue first. I'll get rid of this depression. I'll get rid of this addiction. I'll get rid of this, this whatever I'm going through for trauma. I'll get rid of this. Then I start thinking about God. I can't go to Him right now.
So when you say things like that, one of the things I think it was a hadith, I believe, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I believe,
So,
where it talks about how if we didn't sin, Allah would replace us with people who did.
mm-hmm.
And the reason being is because Allah loves repentance.
True indeed.
So basically, what that's saying is that He expects you to, not that He encourages,
Mm.
He expects you to, because He loves repentance. And that's
Mm.
what He wants from you. So I was actually literally, I was just listening to a lecture about the heart, and when the woman who committed adultery and got pregnant and said that she wanted to be stoned to death, and
Mm-hmm.
it gave me a new perspective of it, because I never actually learned the whole entire hadith. But when it got to the end where people were starting to disrespect her after she was killed, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi
Yep.
wasallam said, if 70 of you did what she did, her repentance would cover all of your sins.
Facts.
You did the same thing.
Yes.
One person.
Mm.
But it was so sincere that it would cover 70 people if they did the same thing that she did. And that's what Allah loves, is the repentance.
True.
Which makes me, I need to do something. And that's why I said, like, sometimes, like, when I be doing stuff, I'm like, I need to take my own advice. Goodness gracious, that was some good stuff.
Yeah. Plus, Allah is already aware.
Mm-hmm.
Like Allah knows you suffering from depression.
Mm-hmm.
He already knows that. He know about that. He know about the idea. In fact, you know what? That's some divine timing, because I was actually looking at this hadith before we started recording, and I think it's relevant. I'm gonna let me 1 second. Give me a second. I think this is so relevant that I want the audience to see it. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this hadith, there are different forms of this hadith. This is in Abi Dawood,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Sahih according to Sheikh Al-Albani.
Mm-hmm.
May Allah have mercy upon him.
Mm-hmm.
Abu Huraira responded to the Prophet. Abu Huraira responded the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as saying, Allah has ignored for my community what comes to their mind, as long as they do not pronounce words to that effect. As long as they do not act or pronounce words to that effect. Now, this is in the chapter of divorce. If you've seen this particular hadith in different books, it talks about, it basically alludes to it like a man saying, I'm done with this bit. I'm done with her. I'm
Mhm.
about to divorce her. But it's in the mind. Doesn't
Mhm.
say it out. You don't say it out loud. You
Mhm.
don't act upon it. Allah has forgiven you. But in relation to what we were just talking about, in a general way, Allah, he does not he does not judge us for what's going on in the mind as long as we don't speak it and we don't act upon it. So there may be people out here, you got whatever reason, because of trauma, because of mental health issues, they may be thinking some crazy stuff in their head. And they may think because of the stuff they thinking in their head, I can't make salat now. I
Mhm.
can't go to Juma. I can't, because I got these things going in my head. Some people might be dealing with some alternative sexualities.
Mhm.
And they think because I have these ideas in my head, but if you haven't acted upon them, and if you haven't spoken it, you actually haven't committed a sin as of yet.
Mhm.
It's not sinful to have a mental health injury.
Mhm.
Can you speak on that? That the person who may be going through some mental health problem, they're not necessarily sinful or weak. Because I've heard people say that the person who has depression, they'll refer to them as being weak or being deficient.
Mhm. Yeah. So there's a few things that I want to say about that. Number one, and this by the mercy of Allah, because again, if you look at stuff, when you think about Surah and Nas, I believe in Nas, right? And talk about Shaitan whispers, right?
Hmm.
If someone whispers to you something, what happens? Your brain does what? It goes into your brain and you think in it because that person says something to you. Well, what do you think happens if Shaitan whispers something? It becomes,
Start thinking.
you start thinking about it, right?
Hmm.
And I think I believe, and this is my belief, that that's one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish you for thoughts, because it's the thoughts even yours, number one. I mean,
Mm.
we've all thought some crazy stuff where you be like, why did I even think that? Like it would be so left field. It don't have nothing to do with nothing that's going on. But Shaitan just knows that you may be afraid of something and whisper it to you, and then he draw back. And then
Mm.
when you act upon it, that's when you become responsible for it. And then on
Mm.
and this is the thing, in the law, listen, one of the things that I love about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of the millions of things that I love, is that he even tells you that on a day of judgment, what Shaitan is going to say to him, like, I didn't tell him that. He's gonna be like, I'm free of what you did.
Mm. Mm.
So remembering that he whispers, but he doesn't make you do anything, right? So
Mm.
that's going to be on you that you did those. But when you think about thoughts are, we cannot control our thoughts. We can control how we respond to our thoughts.
Mm.
Things
Yes.
things just pop in our head, and the reason why things pop in our head is because one, whether that's um behaviors that we have done so often that they become unconscious, versus Shaitan whispering to us to try to bring us back to whatever it was that we were doing,
True.
or the little shayateen humans that he used to derail you from whatever it is that you are doing. And I promise you, the more that you start to get closer to our law, more of those things are going to start happening. Shaitan don't care about people that's already doing everything.
Hmm.
So if you are on that path of seeking Allah's forgiveness and you're on a path of learning more, you're going to be attacked more.
Mm-hmm.
That come with the territory. Because what he really wants you to do is waste time.
Mm. Okay.
So if I could waste time,
Time. Time is the one thing you cannot buy.
hmm, he just wants you to waste time. A lot of times, Shaitan don't come to you, but like, commit shirk. Like, no, he come with wasting time. Oh, turn on the TV. You want to watch that new show.
Step by step.
Oh, do this, do that, do that.
And like the people of Noah,
Mm-hmm.
alayhi salam, for those who may not know, how he went to those people and just make a statue, just make something you can remember the righteous people by. Just make a like a memorial, something you can remember them by, and then the next generation comes. And you're like, well, why do we got these statues? And she think, well, those are your gods. That's
Mhm.
what they used to worship. Oh, that's what they're for. Yep, that's what they're for. Next thing you know, now you in shirk. But it's like it does, like you said, it don't come to you all at once.
Mhm.
It'll come to you all at once, and that's what everything:
Mhm.
drugs, alcohol, being violent, alternative lifestyles,
Mhm.
um, all that, step by step, handspan by handspan, until
Mhm.
he got you doing some crazy stuff.
Absolutely. So that's important to always remember that. And then the whole idea that having depression means that you're weak.
Yes, speak on that.
Oh, so kind of law. Depression is like trying to take your hand and put it over a hot stove,
Mm,
right? Unless you have some way to override that, you can never do it. You can try, like go ahead, just try. Like we have a lot of mental processes that's happening all at one time,
okay.
and in in America, and if you have an American diet,
Mm,
you're probably depressed,
mm,
right? So we have different levels of depression, right? We have some people who the depression is like trying to put their hand over a hot stove, but also you have depression that looks like anger. Now, anger makes you feel better, and so allows you to be able to do stuff. People be thinking like, no, the reason why, blah blah blah, I could do this and I could do that, but yeah, because you're angry. You're angry, and your body's pumping cortisol, which is killing you,
yes, kill your heart.
but you're still depressed. Kills your heart. Woo, it kills every endocrine system that you got going on. That's why people start having diabetes and they
Mm,
having all kinds of other health issues, bones deteriorating because because cortisol pumps is for the fight or flight. So basically, when you are constantly pumping cortisol through your body is literally on high alert that some danger is about to happen.
mm. Now you don't. Now you get into my bag because you're getting into the things that I researched. Now you mentioned the American Standard Diet, and
Yeah.
we talked about at the end of the last podcast about how your diet can affect your body and your moods and your mental states as well. You know, um, that American Standard Diet, which I mean, I don't know if you can still call it the American because we're exporting that across the world now. They got Kentucky Fried Chicken in UAE now. So wh- what can you say about that American Standard Diet and diet in general and mental state and mood?
So majority of our like feel good hormones and stuff like that actually lives in our stomach. People think
Mm,
that it hits here. Actually, it's
okay.
not. That's why people who um overeat, they start to feel good for a little bit because they're eating to make this in their stomach and it makes them feel good. Then eventually it doesn't again. So it's like it becomes a big loop.
Like a drug?
Oh, absolutely. Most things in our life is drugs. It really is. Whether that's shopping, overeating, um, regular drugs, um, even some people addicted to toxic behaviors. Like, and that's why I
Toxic people?
yes, that's why I said at the beginning, right, that we're all slaves to something,
Mm.
which is
But
why
people, no, people in America, they free. This is the land of liberty. They free.
no, free to be
I'm
blind.
free.
No, free to be blind. No, we're all a slave to something.
Mm. Facts.
I hope is the true and living God. And,
Now, if you're looking at the screen, I got this article up here.
mhm,
Um, it says how your gut microbiome, I think that's the way
mhm,
you pronounce it, is linked to depression and anxiety.
mhm,
And it goes on the gut microbiome as a extra organ in the human body.
mhm,
And I even seen something where there are some researchers talking about mainly dealing with the gut in treating depression.
Hmm.
Like they want to focus, they're calling focusing totally on the person's gut.
Yeah.
Even to the extent I seen one thing they were talking about doing fecal matter transplants.
Hmm.
That they said that by taking flushing somebody's gut out and transplanting the fecal matter of a person with a healthy gut into another person's gut, it not only changed their microbiome, it got rid of depression and other uh, even ADHD symptoms.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
Yes. So
That sounds crazy, but hey, it's real research.
yes, so I've suffered from clinical depression for many, 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 many years. Um, Even on to the point of being on Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin helped, but not really like to the point of I've been feeling my best lately since I stopped the Wellbutrin. Now, granted, don't do what I did, okay? Like
Okay.
because it's really you definitely should do it under a doctor's advisement because everybody is different. Okay. So what I
Okay.
started doing after I stopped taking my Wellbutrin is that I took a probiotic, right?
Mm-hmm. I take
And
a probiotic.
not the probiotic that's on shelves.
Okay.
Probiotics are living uh bacteria. So if it's
Okay.
on the shelf, that means they're dead.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about from live cultures and things like
Yes.
that.
So it should
Okay.
if it's not if it doesn't have to be refrigerated, it's no good. All that yogurt and all that kind of stuff, no good. And the reason why not is because milk is to make a calf fat,
Hmm. Okay.
make you fat.
Okay.
And as you get more fat, hormones get out of whack. Remember, like fat and stuff like that has hormones and all that other kind of stuff. It's
Yep.
not
We
that good.
touched on that on the last episode.
It's not that good for you. I took it started there. But also I take estaganda root. That helps with anxiety. Um, I started taking a magnesium L-theanine. Magnesium help with sleep, which is very, very important. Most people in the world are deficient of magnesium.
Mm.
And be careful, it's multiple kinds of magnesium. One of them will have you going to the bathroom and pooping. So if you ain't constipated, so too. If you are, take that one. Um, black seed oil and all these
Of
different things.
course.
Mhm. Um,
Cure for everything except death.
yes. So taking these different supplements, it really, really helps. And a lot of us have vitamin D deficiency, which also contributes to depression,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have to take care of your body. See, the way we used to eat, if you ever noticed, was stews, right? Because the stews had all different kinds of herbs and fruits, vegetables, and stuff like that, all mixed together. We don't eat like that now. We're like, oh yeah, let me get a burger. No tomatoes, no lettuce, just cheese. Put some ketchup on it, some mayo.
A, a Big Mac.
Yes. Give me a triple with those fries,
Mm-hmm.
a biggie drink that can take paint off of a car. I
Uh,
like let's really think like this. If you pour water on a car, nothing happens. You put some soda on it, it starts stripping your paint. Think about what it's doing to your stomach.
mm. Murder King.
Now, I'm not trying
Murder
to tell
King.
people like, oh, I gotta quit all this and become like vegan, blah blah. No, but things need to be done in moderation,
Yeah.
and that's what we don't do.
But that should never. There used to be a time we talk about the American Standard Diet because the American Standard Diet has changed.
Hmm.
So it used to be a time where that type of stuff wasn't considered everyday food.
Hmm.
That was something you probably maybe did on the weekend or for here and now then. You didn't, go out for burgers and pop and French
Mhm.
fries. But now people, especially if we touched on this, if you live in a food desert,
Yeah.
you're a single parent, you're constantly working, you ain't got time to come home and cook because
Mhm.
by the time you get off work, you only got a couple of hours. Got to help the kids with homework. They got to go to bed. I'm gonna stop and get some Wendy's.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop and get this Wendy's. I'm gonna stop and get this quarter pounder, and
Mhm.
it can be under certain circumstances for certain people. This can turn into their everyday food.
Yeah.
So if that turns into your everyday food for your child, and you live in a food desert, you can't get fresh vegetables and fruits, and
Mhm.
you eating all this meat and all this processed food.
Mhm.
How would that affect the child's behavior,
Mhm.
their ability to learn?
Mhm.
You speak on
Absolutely.
that real quick.
Yeah. So really quickly, like if if my body is not being nourished properly,
Hmm.
how can I focus on anything? Even the idea of how they say drink all this water, you really shouldn't drink the amount of water that they tell you to drink. You're
Mm.
flushing out your system.
Okay.
Yes, we need water, but you know where we can get better water from? Fruits and
Fruits and
vegetables.
vegetables. Hmm.
Fruits and vegetables.
Mm.
The amount of water they tell you to drink is actually not good for you. You need to start getting some real grapes.
You
Real.
can't find no seed. You can't find no seed grapes. I was just in the grocery market today. They got all these signs up. Seedless grapes. Seedless grapes. I'm like, where are the grapes
Seedless,
with the seeds?
seedless watermelon. That's not
Yeah.
natural. It's not
Yeah.
natural. If you want seedless something, go get vegetables.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting. This is a study from the National Library of Medicine that I have up on the screen.
Mhm.
We're talking about the gut microbiome profiling and collateral cancer in African Americans and Caucasians. Now, I read through this real quick, and it basically said that there is a difference between the microbiome gut of African Americans and Caucasians.
Mhm.
They can straight up look at your gut and know whether you white or black.
Mhm.
And they are saying that there's a link between the black people's microbiome and the bad bacteria and colon cancer.
Mhm. Which we die at higher rates.
Yes, they're saying that there's a uptick because even my doctor told me that I need to get the check. You
Instead of
know,
check.
the check. uh, the check. He told me, yeah, we used to give it to people when they were 50, but there's so many people um, being diagnosed with it that we were dropping it down. They were lowering the age to go get the check. And I'm like, wow, man. And they're linking that to the what's going on inside your gut.
Mhm.
Crazy. And we don't, for us, I'm speaking for my people, African American people, we don't have this information. Not only they got us living in food deserts. We
Mhm.
don't know anything about nutrition. We
Mhm.
don't know anything about personal finance. We don't know nothing about starting a business. We don't know nothing about Tawheed and the true worshiping the true and living Lord himself without partners. So we don't know the truth about how these so-called holy books were written. We don't know a lot of we're steeped in darkness and ignorance.
Mhm. And the thing about it is they know. Again, I don't know if I said this the last time, is
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, why do you think the Food and Drug Administration is in the same building?
Mm.
Because they know, they understand the relationship between food and how it is a drug and how it
Mm.
can either help you or harm you.
Mm. And it's harming us. It's harming us. Now, check this out. Everyday experiences of racism can impact your brain gut microbiome, new study shows. This one, this one really blew my mind.
Absolutely.
This
But
is
even think about it. Let's just stop for a moment and think about when you experience racism or any kind of stress, right? You ever experience stress, two things can happen, right? You either lose your appetite where you
mm,
don't eat. So now your body's not getting no nutrients, or you
okay.
overeat. And a lot of times you're not eating good stuff. Ice cream, burgers, fries. Stress
Chips.
impacts yeah, stress
That's my weakness.
it impacts the way you eat.
hmm Yeah, and that and so you talked about cortisol earlier, which comes from
Mhm.
stress, right?
Yes.
So you're out in this society, you going to work, you're experiencing, because this is what it's talking about. Study of 154 adults was self-identifying as African, Asian American, Black, Hispanic, and white, all reported experiencing discrimination, but Black people as reported multiple times more discrimination. And when they tested them, they saw that they had inflammation. This was causing inflammation throughout the body, and it was disrupting their gut microbiome.
Mhm.
So we're experiencing systemic racism in this society. It's already got us stressed out. Then we turn to this Franken food
Mhm.
to try to get some temporary relief, and that stresses us out also. No wonder why so many of us are dropping dead, even though everything is by the cutter of a law. We know that,
Mhm.
but you know, COVID came through. Look how many African Americans it affected and took out. Even after COVID, everybody I know, every time I get on the phone with a family member, the first thing that comes up, you know who died,
Mhm.
like that, like every single time I'm getting text messages.
Mhm.
Guess who died? I just got a cousin down south who he was supposedly very healthy,
Mhm.
died in his sleep,
Subhanallah.
didn't even wake up. You know, and it's like we are being abused and we are abusing ourselves.
Mhm.
What is the psychology behind a person who's being abused wanting to abuse themselves?
So it could be a number of reasons because, well, when I say a number of reasons, everybody's like makeup and temperament is different,
Okay.
and that plays into stuff too, right?
hmm
So you may have someone who that's how they were raised, right? You were raised, and what was modeled was that when someone does something to you, you internalize it. It's
mm
your fault that they are
Okay.
doing it to you. So what we do is we try to appease them. That's the people pleasing stuff.
hmm
And us as African Americans who have went through slavery, we had to please massa. And so
Yeah.
even with all of the information that we have about how racism or things like that are still impacting us, yet we still continue to turn on each other because the best thing that they ever did that worked for them was the whole idea of making house ninjas and field ninjas,
mm
right? Because when you created that division, it made us start bickering towards each other. So we're always imploding all the time
Okay.
because we're always suspicious of each other. And then we start developing a whole mentality of I'm gonna get them before they get me.
mm
You know, I've met a lot of people who want to support, black businesses and stuff like that, but their fear of being got is so overwhelming. And it's
Yep.
and it's the
I've
whole
heard that too.
and it's their whole idea that somehow they're gonna get us. And so by us turning outside is really still being abusive towards ourselves.
True.
And one of the things that I said to somebody before, they were like, they said that, and I said, okay, so you go to a black owned business and they dab is off, right? I said, okay. I said, because we weren't taught how to have business etiquettes. Our dab is off. So you don't go back. But what happens when you have an employee at Walmart give you a bad attitude, what you do?
You still gonna come back to that Walmart?
You still go back.
Yeah.
And you keep going back, regardless of whatever mistreatment that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they were like, oh, black-owned businesses, though, their prices are too high. Our prices are too high because we don't have support.
Mm.
And when I say we don't have support, I don't even mean just support from our people. I mean support in getting information,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to raise prices. Like, so in Darby, it was somebody who opened up a hair supply store. It
Okay.
was Asian vendors. It was, other Asian stores that went to the vendors and said, if you sell to that black-owned person, we're gonna stop using you as a vendor.
Mm. Undermining.
So now he got to go find other vendors, right? That's going to charge him more than likely. And so now I got to charge you more, but because you don't want to come here anyway, now I got to charge even more because products are going to go bad. I
Mm-hmm.
still have to I still have to, you know, run the business and my own personal lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, I'm not talking. People always think that being a business owner, you gonna have this lavish lifestyle. I live in the hood, okay? I live in the hood, and yes, my prices are $150 an hour. And people are like, why so high? Because I have to pay more being black. When I go
Mm.
into places, they like, oh, I'm like, oh, I want to rent this office space. This one lady showed me a box and said 1,300. I said, I know this don't cost no 1,300. I literally can lay down and my feet touch the wall and my hands touch the other side.
Mm.
1,300.
Mm. But see, a lot of us, if we do the math and work it out, we can understand that. Like you just said, the Asian store owners undercutting black business owners. It happens in every industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we know we getting treated wrong, but we'll still go to them.
Yeah.
But we won't go to us talking about they may do something wrong to us.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy thinking.
Yeah. And then on top of that, right? So then as a black business owner, a lot of times we have to hire our counterparts, right? To show like we have some diversity, come see us, right? But they don't do it.
Mm.
It's very rare that you go into Asian stores. Very rare that you go into Asian store and you see.
No, no.
I have seen it, but it's very, very rare.
And a lot of times those are abusive situations.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have some type of immigrant who owns some type of shop in the hood, and they'll hire a young girl
Mm-hmm.
to come work in with them, and she's being sexually harassed.
Mm-hmm.
They might be keeping her check, running all type of games on her. So again,
Underpaying
we
her,
will
all that kind
yes,
of stuff.
yeah.
Like,
We go to other people who abuse us in the name of, well, that's just what we got to do.
mm-hmm.
But we got all types of excuse not to do business with each other. At the slightest little thing, well, I can't deal. Michelle, I can't deal with her.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't smile. She didn't smile when I came in there.
Yeah.
You know, you know, like I wanted to buy some items, and I found a store. A brother has a store. He's selling all types of personal items. He sells, herbs and bitters. He sells all types of stuff. Now I could get some of this stuff online for a slightly cheaper price.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm not going to. I'm not giving my money to Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get in my car and I'll drive and give him the money because first of all, I know he's feeding himself, he's feeding his family. He's giving money to the masjid.
Mm-hmm.
He's giving sadaqah. That money starts to circulate,
Yes.
and our money don't circulate. Our resources don't circulate. As soon as we get resources, we give it to somebody else, and they circulate it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wonder why we haven't built anything yet.
And even like with insurance, because I do accept insurances, I
Mm-hmm.
signed a contract with an insurance agency. I'm not going to say what the insurance was. It was, and let's just say hypothetically, they gave me $60 per session, right? But when I signed up with them, they did not give me also the new contract that starts in a new year. I'm just gonna say a new year is in the future, in a new year, that gives me $30 extra per session.
Mm.
I happened to hire someone that knew it and said, "Hey,
Mm.
um, they just sent out new contracts and stuff like that.
Mm.
You didn't get the new one, and they didn't even send they ain't even send it. So I had to email them like, "Hey, can I get the new contract?"
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many examples just like that where we are it and a lot of people will say, "Oh, you guys are just imagining things. Ugh, you guys just take any slight and it's got to be about race. You're making everything about race." And no, that's gaslighting. You
Mhm,
know, that's gaslighting. We're not imagining anything.
mhm,
It's not all in our head. We've been experiencing this for 400 to 500 years,
mhm,
and you know throwing Martin Luther King up, I got a dream, and in a bill that doesn't erase everything. It's still going on today.
mhm,
It's still happening. It's just evolved and it's gotten smarter.
mhm.
That's probably one. I mean, thing. That's one of the drawbacks is that this systemic racism has gotten smarter,
Yeah,
and
it's called
yeah,
TV, television. Tell the vision.
yeah,
Tell the vision. Who vision? Because it ain't mine's.
yeah,
And I don't know if you ever watch a show and say, and then a few years later it starts to happen. You be like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." Remember when I forgot what it's called, but it's a certain term that they called it. Actually, it shows that it's priming you for what's to happen to desensitize people to the foolery that's about to start happening.
yeah.
I don't know if anybody ever watched The Handmaid's Tales where they start stripping women of their rights. And then what happened? They started stripping women of their rights.
Hmm, hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, the TVs and the movies. That is. uh, Look at everything that's considered normal today.
Mm-hmm.
That was not considered normal 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was through television and movies that the people were primed up to be able to accept what's being told. We're being told is normal today.
Absolutely.
We were being programmed. It's a program. That's they're telling you it's a program.
Yes, they literally tell you like it's called for the upcoming programming.
Uh, you said you got the program about to come on. I gotta hurry up. Gotta hurry up and get home. You about to you'll skip some of y'all skips a lot. Just to watch the program. You will watch the program.
Mm-hmm.
And man, they got us by the legs and the arms.
Mm-hmm.
But remember when that whole thing was happening with Popeye's chicken. Popeye's chicken came out with their chicken sandwich, and all these videos start popping up of people getting in fights about Popeye's chicken. People were smashing cars into because they didn't get they ordered 5 Popeye chicken sandwiches. They only got 3. They smashing their cars into the building, and people was getting their butt whipped. By people was going crazy over that Popeye's chicken,
Yeah.
right? And that goes in line with what we were talking about. Some of this food can drive you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want let me bring this back up. Hold on. Hold on. Where are you at? Here we go. Check this out. Diet swap has dramatic effects on colon cancer risk for Americans and Africans. This was a study where they took African Americans and Africans and they swapped diets, and they made the African Americans eat. They didn't specify what part of Africa it was in the article, but they made them eat what they called an African diet.
Mm-hmm.
And the markers and the risk for colon cancer, as well as other risk factors, dropped within 2 weeks.
Hmm.
So I'm harping on this subject because, you know, I'm trying to get, I'm trying to do something about my personal diet as well, you know, and I'm trying to get my family to get on board
Hmm.
because I'm the husband and the father, I'm the leader, you
Hmm.
know. I recognize that, we weren't eating correctly.
Hmm.
So I got to be the vanguard to change all that so everybody else can see an example and get in line with what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to be patient and I'm trying to spread this information to my other family, to mothers, fathers, cousins, nieces, and nephews. All these, I'm trying to spread this information that this diet is killing us and is driving us crazy.
Yeah,
But we laughed at when that whole thing with Popeye's chicken happened. We were laughing at it, but we should have been crying about it
absolutely.
because we were acting a fool about some chicken that we don't even own. Black people don't even own Popeye's chicken. And
Yeah.
y'all was going crazy over that. We don't even own it.
Mhm.
We don't even own it. All right, so we're over an hour. I'm gonna leave that on people's minds.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that on people's minds as the last word on this. This was another great show, a whole bunch of great information. If you have not seen part one, go back and watch part one, then come back and watch part two. So much information, you know, man. I kind of want to do it again. I kind of want to do a part three again, but I'm gonna hit you up about that. I'm gonna hit you up about that.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna hit you up about that. I like to thank the audience for taking the time to watch the podcast because you could have. YouTube is full of hundreds of different things. You can watch somebody do all practically. You can watch somebody play video games on YouTube if you wanted to, but you chose to watch this, and I thank you very much. All I ask you to do is to hit the like button. If it's good enough to hit the like button, share it. If it's good enough to share, leave a comment. If you disagree with something, you disagree. You think me and Michelle are crazy. You think we crazy and out of our minds. We don't know what we talking about. Leave a comment and let us know how we don't know nothing. We don't know. She don't know what she talking about. Tell us. I want to hear it. Leave the comment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if it's anything that I need to clarify, like I'm always willing to clarify anything. I'm always, well, when I say I'm always available, I mean like I will respond in a timely manner. But if you come to my Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and comment, I do respond.
That's a good point. I didn't highlight that in this video. The sister does have her own YouTube presence. Everyone favorite therapist. She has Instagram. She has Facebook. So find her, hit her up, and she has her own personal business website for her business, for her therapy business. If you're in that Philadelphia,
Mm,
New Jersey type area, you might want to book a consultation with
mm,
the sister so you can get some help.
yeah. If you
Don't be afraid to get some help. If there's
have,
nothing else you haven't learned anything, if you didn't learn anything else, don't be afraid to ask for some help.
mhm. I'm available. I help when I can help. I if you're like an inspiring therapist and you're like I will help you. Like that's what I do. Like if I know, you know. That's just how I am. I don't hold information. Even if you're like, hey, can I get business tips? I will give it to you. Like I don't hold anything because the information that's in my brain didn't come from me. It came from Allah. So I don't own no information.
Mhm.
Now, if you want me
Hear
to go
that
into
too.
like, yeah, if you want to go into like business strategies, then you gotta pay for that. But if you like want some tips, I give it. I have no problem
Alhamdulillah.
with it. I'm like, oh, you want to open up your own counseling business? I would literally be like, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
I would
Y'all
tell
hear
you,
that? Y'all hear that, right?
like, I would literally tell you what to do. Like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. If I don't know and I know somebody that can point you in the right direction, I do that too. I do not mind. I don't hold no information because it does not belong to me.
I want to leave you with one last question.
Yes.
How important do you think it is for Muslims to get into the mental health care profession? Because I had a relative who's a social worker. They
Mhm,
told me, I had a Muslim client. They have schizophrenia, and
mhm,
they were telling me about this Muslim client that has schizophrenia, and they're getting resources from the county.
mhm,
And so there's a lot of Muslims who are having mental health issues, and
mhm,
they don't have another Muslim who understands their faith and the nuances of this Islamic lifestyle, this
mhm.
way of life. More than a religion, it's a complete way of life. They don't know the nuances of this complete way of life like another Muslim would have. Speak on that real quick.
Absolutely. So like I was in therapy probably like last year or something like that, and I had someone who was non-Muslim, and we were talking, and she recommended, she was like, hey, I think something that will be really really good for you is like, listen to some music, it might help relax you. I said,
Mm,
and I was like, subhanallah, I was like, I just want you to know that being Muslim, we're not allowed to listen to music. So that wouldn't be a good recommendation for someone who's Muslim.
mm,
Something as simple as that,
mm,
you know, or even like things like, uh, I have a client now, she's a Muslim woman and she lives with her family.
okay.
And and trust me, she's having a lot of difficulties with her family because they're abusive, just point blank and period. But if she went to somebody secular, they're gonna like move out. You don't gotta listen to your dad. Like who? Like no, you can't. You can't just do
Mm,
that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
mm,
other ways that you gotta, navigate that and
mm,
have those conversations, and because it's just that's not the deen, that's not the religion. Now
mm,
granted, I'm not saying that I wouldn't advocate for her to move out because it's abusive, but at the same time, it's not the level of abuse where it's like, it's still dangerous because it's emotional and mental abuse, but it's not to the level of so crazy like a narcissistic abuse that
okay.
she's like literally in danger. It's just more of like, you know, catty stuff. What I'm not gonna say, I don't want to downplay it because it wasn't catty stuff, but it's not there.
It's not as serious to cut somebody off.
Yes, it's not to the level of cutting someone off in order to make sure that you are having, your own well being and stuff like that.
And I've
So
noticed that, like, if I click on some mental health videos on YouTube, I've noticed that advice is out here a lot about cutting off the relations. People cutting their
yes,
parents off of I'm Democrat. My father is Republican. I don't speak to him any longer.
yeah.
You know,
I don't know.
you
Like,
know.
no, that's not how that works. You know what I'm saying? So it's that whole thing that they don't understand the religion, they don't understand the deen, they don't understand our way of life and the benefits and the way we do things with our families
Mm,
and how we
mm.
deal with our families.
Yeah, how we deal with everything, really.
Yeah, everything.
Even yeah, I was just thinking like marriage counseling.
Mhm.
You know, what if you go to a marriage counselor, you're Muslim, and
And
the
we talk
marriage
about
counselor,
polygyny.
yeah, you talking about polygyny, they about to report you. They get ready to call some authorities or
Mhm.
something. They got kids in the house. Yeah, that's no, we laughing, but that could be something. They might call DHS, child, the
Protective
child
service.
people and everything
Because
on
I've
you.
had that happen. They be like I'll be talking to like, I have some other I do have another counselor that works at the practice, and she's non-Muslim, and she got a Muslim client, and she like, doesn't her husband have to ask him to get another wife? I'm like, no. You know what I'm saying? But those I especially if someone is a new Muslim,
Mm,
so now you got the blind leading the blind.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, no, he don't have to ask you. Like that's not a thing. Like
yeah, yeah. That could go wrong in so many different ways. You
so it's
know.
that whole idea, or like, oh, not how nights work. They be wrong. Like, no, that's not how that works. No,
Hmm.
this is not how that works. So they don't know. They only know by what other ignorant non-Muslims say. Because the ignorant ones are the loudest.
Yeah, yeah. They have the strongest opinions. People who don't know nothing about Islam, think they know everything about Islam.
Until you start to learn, you realize, like, my favorite line is, I know 0.000000001% of the deen. That's all I know. That's it. Even like the amount of surahs that I know in relations to the Quran, like, it's a big gap. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
you talk about understanding and the hadiths and putting. I don't know.
And then I was just thinking it could be, well, you're a Muslim, you're going to a non-Muslim therapist. Now you got parts of your life that you feel like you can't even talk to your therapist about. There's major issues in your life you can't even talk to you feel like, I'm not even going to bring that up because they're not even going to understand it. It's going to, you're going to start asking a bunch of questions, and I don't feel like explaining all this. You can't be yourself.
Yep. And
can't
that's
be your true self.
So I think that it's very, very important for Muslims to go into health, like, just in general though, the healthcare field, because the way we are as Black people, like, as a Black person, we know other Black people. So, like, sometimes too, if you go into your doctor's office and you were like, oh, I don't want to tell my doctor about this, and they Black too, so they like, I know you be doing this, don't you? And all that, you be using all that Larry seasoning salt, don't you? And the adobo, talking about, I'm gonna put onion powder, like, that ain't onions. Like, we know, they don't have, it's better when you don't have to explain those kinds of things to your doctor and your healthcare professional.
Yeah. From the level of the deen, the level of culture, ethnicity, even woman to woman, man to man, who can relate to what you're going through. Subhanallah.
Yes.
So I mean, we definitely need more Muslims to be knowledgeable about mental health.
Yes.
All around.
Especially men. Oh my goodness. I only know one Muslim man, two Muslim men therapists. Two.
Wow. Alhamdulillah. May Allah make it better.
Amen.
So again, we come to the end of the show. We're gonna break it down now, and I thank everybody for tuning in. I thank my guest, Michelle Davis, trauma therapist, everyone's favorite therapist,
even the ones that don't like me.
Everyone's favorite therapist, for coming on the show again and dropping this science and this mathematics for y'all. And again, like, share, hit the bell, sub, and leave a comment. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right, sister.
Yeah.
I'll be in contact with you.
Absolutely, inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.